open up the oven and have a look inside for a second. And like so many of our Wolf ovens, what you find over here on the right-hand side of the oven is a numbering system which gives you the rack position numbers. 1 always being at the bottom and then working up to number 4, right? So that corresponds to what we're asking, what the oven is telling you here, is that if we're going to steam 1 tray of something, ideally we use rack position number 2, because that's going to give you the most effective steaming of that item if we're just using 1 tray. But then it also says, or 1 to 4. What that also means is that when you're steaming is, I can use any rack position I want, or I can use a combination of any one of those 4 rack positions in order to steam what I want to do. So it gives you 1 to 4, so I can use anything I want, or like I said, a combination. So if I'm going to steam a lot of something and I want to use multiple racks, I can put multiple racks in there. Each one of the modes is going to have a slightly different message for you here that tells you how much you can cook at that time. So that's what it tells us here. And when you see this checkbox in the rectangle, it means, okay, if I want to move on, I need to press the enter button 1 more time. So again, this is a good operation for basic operations. This is going to be true for everything. So once we hit enter, we now have our first choice. We can choose a temperature setting. And in order to modify that temperature, we'll touch enter 1 more time. And now we can scroll up. What this also tells us right at this point in this first screen, and this is true for every single mode, what the temperature range in that mode can be. In this case, the lowest temperature we can set for pure steam is 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature is 210 degrees. All right? So once we've chosen that temperature, we can set it at 210. We scroll over, and now we have the duration button. Now, duration basically is for that preparation that you know how long it will take. If it takes 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it might be, you can choose to set a duration. If we set a duration for that operation, the oven will run that exact period of time, and then it will turn itself off at the end or give you a chance to extend that operation should you need to. So for recipes where you know how long you want to run the steam or the convection steam, you can then choose that exact moment. And that's really helpful because then you know at the end of that moment, the oven will shut itself off, right? And that is changed again by always pressing the up arrow, and then you can scroll up or down in order to change that duration. And then once you got that set, your temperature and your duration, you can scroll to the end. Then you have the start operation button. And if you're impatient, like I frequently am, and I just want to get going, I scroll to the end where it says start operation, I hit enter, and it automatically turns on the oven. If I don't really feel like I need to do that, the oven will count down and start automatically without me having to press any more buttons once I've programmed it the way I want. So that's your basic operation. Again, steam, all the steam is introduced clean into the oven. You can set that temperature again, high or low, in terms of from 90 to 210 degrees. Those lower temperatures are ideal for defrosting different food groups and things like that when you're in the oven. And obviously you can set it in intermediate temperatures if you're interested in doing sort of a sous vide style cooking, or you want to just poach some fish or something like that at a lower temperature. It's always advisable not to use that really, really high temperature for poaching fish. So using a temperature between 175 and say 205 degrees is an ideal seafood cooking temperature. When you're in the steamer, it makes a much more gentle way of cooking. So again, steam is going to give you that full envelope of steam. It's immediate. You never have to preheat. Very rarely actually you preheat when you're in steam mode. You can literally introduce the food cold into the oven, start the oven cold, and it will steam from that point because the steam transfers the heat so efficiently, which is one of the great things about the CSO. So when you're steaming, you're going to use one of the 3 trays that you're going to get with the oven when you get it home. You're going to get a perforated tray just like this, ideal for steaming anything. You can put vegetables, seafood, chicken breast, whatever you might want to steam on here. I always recommend that when you use that perforated tray to do some steaming, take the solid tray, which also comes with your oven, and put that in a rack below your steaming tray. That way you get any moisture or water that accumulates from the food you're cooking will gather on this tray. Just makes it a little easier to clean up. when you put that underneath. And then the other rack that you'll get will be 2 of these wire racks, which is ideal for putting a 9x13 pan or something else on it that you might want to cook in a vessel. You can put this right on the rack and then slide that in there, gives you another way to cook. So those 3 all are going to come. Now, here's one thing that took me a bit to learn, but anyway, there is a front and a back to these ovens. And if you notice, it's maybe hard to see on the video. I'm going to try to lift it up right here. You can see that this side over here has a sort of more pronounced angle to that side of the pan, and this one is a little more upright, a little more like a 90 degree. This is the part that goes to the front of the oven. This, the more angled part, is what's going to slide into the back. This just allows the airflow to be more consistent over the surface of the pan, giving you a more even cooking when you're using the pan. So there is a front and there is a back. So we definitely want that. It's also a little easier to grab this side, this straight side, when you're taking the pan out of the oven. So just keep that in mind. So now we're a little bit about the steam modes and how we're using that. And again, great for defrosting things. So if you want to set those lower temperatures for defrost, that's a great way to do it. It'll replace your microwave. For those of you who've defrosted things in a microwave and it gets that weird sort of wrinkly, weird cooked part around the outside and the inside is still frozen and the outside is half cooked, this is never going to happen. But a good temperature range for defrost, somewhere between 90 and 110 degrees is really an ideal temperature in the steam setting for doing a defrost. I've actually defrosted things like pie dough at those lower temperatures where it defrosts very, very gently. Doesn't melt the butter, so my pie dough remains nice and flaky and crispy when I actually roll it out. So those are a couple of the advantages of just having pure steam. Right? Now that second mode that we talk about is our convection mode. And just like all of our other Wolf ovens, we have just straight convection. It's a nice dry air, temperature ranging from about 180 degrees up to, 90 degrees up to 440 degrees, the maximum temperature of the oven, 440. Really a wide range for your convection oven. Again, at a lower temperature, great for dehydrating, things like that, when running in pure convection. Just a single fan element in the back, and then there's an element under the floor to heat the oven when we're in convection. Again, good for baking a tray of cookies, something that steam is not really going to benefit. That's what convection is obviously all about, or steam or a combination of steam and dry air are not really going to benefit. So something that needs to be dry or something that needs to be really, really crispy on the outside and steam is not going to improve the quality of that, then you definitely want to just use that straight convection mode in there. And that's the second of the modes there. Okay. So now, what's really making this oven unique is the next 2 modes, convection steam and convection humid, right? Convection steam is the first of the combination modes where we're using steam in a combination with dry convection driven air in order to create a great environment that really spans the gamut so that you can use low temperatures for certain preparations and obviously higher temperatures when you want things to have a beautiful brown, crispy exterior crust, or you want to roast some potatoes or vegetables or something like that, something where you really want to create some texture and some color and some drama with the food. You can use convection steam. Now, first question everybody always says to me is, Ben, doesn't make any sense. You're telling me if I want something brown and crispy, I should use steam, right? That doesn't make any sense because none of us are going to take a steak and boil it and say, oh, look how lovely the outside of my steak is because I used steam to cook it, right? But in this oven, convection steam really does benefit the browning and the crispiness of certain items when you cook it in this mode. And the way it does that is that, remember, we're using steam as part of that cooking process through the entirety of the cooking process. So what that's doing, remember that steam is always a more efficient transfer of, or a medium to transfer heat between the oven and the food. So we're cooking the food a lot faster because we're using steam to jumpstart that cooking. It's going to immediately start cooking a potato, a chicken, anything like that. It's going to start cooking it with that intense steam temperature at the beginning. And then we're going to raise the temperature up to one of those higher temperatures and get it to brown and crisp while it's getting to those high temperatures, while steam is still present. So if we think of it in the sense that the shorter the amount of time we can subject the food to a high oven temperature, right? The more moist it's going to be, the less chance we have for overcooking it. But then we've also got that high temperature, which is going to do that browning and crisping. So the steam reduces the time, but the high temperature can help brown things at that point as well. So,
doing some technical
okay,
adjustments.
so we have to make some technical adaptations to things. So we'll do that in just a second. Bear with us.
Just maybe square it up a little bit more.
Got it?
How's it?
Good.
Good.
So then in that convection steam mode at a high temperature, that's when we want to brown things. That's when we want to get things crispy and have a wonderful texture and all things. And you'll see an example of that when we pull out the dish that we've made for you today. But then in a lower temperature, what we're really trying to do is mimic a water bath. We're trying to create a bain-marie in the oven by using a low temperature in addition to steam, so that for things like custards, cheesecakes, creme brulee, anything like that, a lower temperature in the convection steam mode. And when we're saying low temperatures, can be as low as 180, 150 degrees. We can then use convection steam to slowly cook something in a gentle environment, but we're still having that slightly higher temperature than just pure steam. And now we're getting a great way to cook a cheesecake or poach a custard or something like that without having to set up a water bath in our oven. It makes a huge difference. So again, convection steam gives you that gamut, gives you that real broad, timer's done, real broad spectrum to cook across. So you can do basically gentle cooking at a low temperature using steam, and then higher temperatures for getting brown and crispy and giving ourselves texture and all that great flavor that we get when we caramelize things in the oven. So again, if you have questions, make sure I think Lynn's answering some of your questions now, but we'll definitely, if you have some specific questions about things, make sure you type them in there. I'm probably going to miss something. So just bear with me, and then we'll answer them as best we can when we get to the end. So the last mode, or the second to last mode, I should say, on the quick start menu is convection humid. Perhaps the mode that has the name that is least indicative of what it's about. What is convection humid, and what would I use it for, right? One of the other nice advantages of this oven is that we can run the oven so that none of the moisture and heat and air from inside the oven during the baking process is actually vented out of the oven. We're able to capture everything that's inside without letting it out, right? So and that's what convection humid mode does. We don't need to create steam with the oven by using water in the reservoir. The only steam that's created in the oven in this mode is from the food that's being prepared in the oven at that time. So items that are high in moisture when they go into the oven: lasagna, macaroni and cheese, things made with a batter, right? Something that you might dry out if it overbakes, or you're not really sure how long you want to bake, but you want to keep it moist. Convection humid is not going to release that moisture from the oven. We're not adding steam, but we're not allowing any moisture to be released. So things tend to take a little more moist, and it's a little more, but you can still get a nice brown top on your lasagna or your macaroni and cheese. You can get that nice caramelization. So convection humid, the oven's not producing steam. It's simply saving the moisture that's being produced by the food that you're baking. So again, convection humid is that idea. I use it a lot for baking. I do certain types of cookies in that mode. I've baked a lot of cakes, some very dense cakes, some heavier cakes like bundt cakes, things like that work nicely in convection humid because they stay nice and moist, even more moist than they might normally be baked in a traditional convection oven. All right? And then the last of those quick start modes is our reheat mode. And quite honestly, for many people, this may be the mode that sways you into buying this oven, because trust me, anything reheated in reheat mode in a convection steam oven is going to come out as well, if not better, than when you made it the first time. So, and my acid test for that was to take home, and which obviously a lot of us are doing a lot of this right now, delivery and take out food maybe. But if you have some leftover rice from a Thai restaurant or a Vietnamese restaurant, something like that, but you want to reheat the rice, and we all know that if we reheat rice in a microwave, we not only have to do a lot of gymnastics to get it right, but it very frequently comes out virtually inedible, right? Dry, almost chalky. But in the convection steam oven, the reheat mode is going to introduce steam while using a lower temperature to reheat the food and make it literally as good as it was when you bought it, if not a little bit better. And rice is one of the great examples of that. Bowl of rice, put some curry or something like that on top of it and reheat it, and the rice is just like you just steamed it that way. So anyway, it's going to use a combination of steam and dry air. Maxes out about 250 degrees, so it's not super hot, but hot enough that your plates will be hot. You don't need special crockery or anything like that for reheating. You can literally just put a dinner plate in there. The only thing I wouldn't recommend in there is putting any plastic in there, but anything else is going to be fine to reheat in, so you don't have to worry about like you would have with a microwave. It's not going to be as fast as a microwave for reheating. It's going to take a little bit longer, somewhere usually between 7 and 10 minutes, depending on how dense the dish is that you're reheating. But what I've always found is that instead of just getting a really hot bowl and slightly tepid food, my food is hot, bowl is hot as well, but the food is hot all the way through. And it's always nice and moist because of the use of steam in order to rehydrate that food while it's reheating. So those are your 5 basic modes. Those are the 5 manual transmissions. Again, just pure steam, straight dry air convection, then your combination modes, which are convection steam for roasting, but also some low temperature baking in terms of recreating a bain-marie in the oven. Then convection humid is your not steam producing, but moisture retention baking mode or roasting mode in there. And then your last is your reheat mode, which is great for all manner of reheating in there. And so that gives you that 5 basic modes for running the oven when you're just using to standard adapt your recipes to it. So let's just give you an example. Maybe we can show you, and Lynn may have to move the camera for you a little bit, but we're going to show you an example of what came out from convection steam. And this is a recipe that we're going to make available. I've just been storing it down here in the M series oven because it's so I can open and close the. So maybe Lynn can just show. This is our.
I can't see.
It's a. I can see it. It's good. So this is a it's a chili and lime roasted chicken, spatchcocked chicken. So we've taken out some of the bones right there, and then we roasted it on a bed of sweet potatoes with some onions and some red bell pepper, some jalapenos. But we just kind of marinated the chicken overnight. You can see we spatchcocked. We used our probe, and the probe comes with all of your oven, so you'll get a temperature probe. And I just want to show you a little bit about how I inserted the probe into the chicken breast when I roasted it. I basically took it and made sure that it was inserted all the way up to the hilt, but then I've got the tip of the probe down here near the wing joint, right there at the base of the chicken breast, and that really thick, heavy part of the chicken breast. And then just let it roast there, set the internal temperature to 155 degrees. And we'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow when we do a little more detailed discussion of using the probe when we talk about the slow roasting mode. But what I found is that when I've roasted the chicken like that with the probe inserted thusly, I have no problem whatsoever getting my legs and thighs cooked as well as I would like them to be cooked, and don't have to worry about taking temperatures in other spots. Right? So you can just see now this total cooking time, including I did a little pre-roast on the vegetables and then added the chicken to it, was less than 50 minutes to get it all the way cooked, all the way through. So it did work out. It's very, very quick. This is a good example of just how quick the oven can be in terms of roasting it. So we're just going to present this a little bit. So if you want to put the camera, I don't know where you want to put it.
There.
So I don't know if we've been getting some questions. I can't see, but I'm certainly happy to answer some if we get some. If everybody has a specific question about perhaps some of what we covered today, and then we can answer those for you.
What pan is that?
So this pan is a pan that you can purchase as a secondary accessory for your convection steam oven. It is It is one of the solid trays for your CSO, but it just has this enameled finish. I use it for almost all the roasting that I do. If I'm doing some prime rib or gonna roast some chickens, I really like this. It cleans up really nicely. I'm sure this is an illusion. I think it cooks better. I'm not really sure if it does. It just feels like it does, but I like to use it for that. So it's just an enameled solid tray that you can order as an accessory to your CSO. You're not going to get this as a standard piece of equipment, but it will come as you can get it as an accessory. So I do love that pan. So I just want you to see here, just 50 minutes cooking. I don't know if you can see, but how beautifully moist this is. And you probably can't see that very well on the camera, but just deliciously moist. The skin is nice and crisp on the outside of the chicken. So it just came out really nicely. And again, you can start to finish. It just took about 50 minutes to cook the whole thing all the way through. Let's see. Again, super moist. The breast is delightfully moist, but again, the legs and thighs are cooked nicely all the way through. Last but not least, got a little garnish that we got here. So again, here's where convection steam really makes a difference. The chicken is beautifully moist all the way through, but we've got a nice crispy skin on the outside.
What mode did you use?
So for this, we used convection steam, started the vegetables at 425 degrees, just did those for about a quick pre-roast of about 10-15 minutes at 425, and then added the chicken with the probe and reduced the temperature to 400, and then finished cooking it. And then again, that took about 35 minutes. Once the chicken was added, it only took about 35 to 40 minutes to cook the chicken all the way through. All the time in convection steam mode. So it was entirely in convection steam, and hopefully I can move this without making anybody nauseous. But you can just kind of see how nice we've got that chicken. I hope that's a pretty good view for all of you. So, but yeah, convection steam, again, anytime you want to roast, and I'm gonna tip this up, and anyway, but anytime you're trying to roast and get a nice, beautiful exterior color on the outside, that convection steam is gonna be your best friend in terms of doing that kind of roast and giving you some lovely exterior texture and color on the outside of your roast or your chicken or whatever it is you might be preparing. So,
yeah,
got some more questions.
I
So
do have a couple questions.
great.
Chuck asked, when they use the reheat mode, there's usually water on the plate that they have to pour off. Should
Right.
they be doing something with the temperature or any way to
No,
prevent
and that's
that?
a great question, Chuck. One of the things you can do, because there's obviously steam introduced into the oven cavity when you're using reheat mode. So what I like to do is take one of my solid trays, put it in rack position 4, so that any of that condensing steam that gathers on the roof of your oven will drip onto that tray rather than condense into the bowl or the plate that you're reheating the food on. That'll prevent some of that water from building up around the outside of your food. So just slide that into that top rack level. That'll catch the water, keep most of it. There's always going to be a little bit of condensation because obviously the plate that you're reheating on is going to be colder. So once the steam comes in contact with it, it will condense and form a little bit of water in the plate that you're reheating. But if you put that tray in the top rack level, you're not going to get as much. But no, you're doing it right. So there's always a little bit of that.
What was the time and temp for a whole chicken?
So if you were going to do a whole chicken without taking any of the bones out, you probably want to add about 10 to 15 minutes of additional cooking time for this recipe. I would not change the temperatures, however. Start your vegetables at 425, get them a jump start, get them starting to roast, and then reduce your temperature to 400 degrees in that convection steam mode. You're going to add a few more minutes. But again, if you're using the probe and it's set to that 155 degree internal temperature, the time is really only going to be dependent on the probe. You're not going to be able to set a timer. You're just going to let the oven cook until that probe temperature is reached, and then you're good to go.
I also asked if it's common to have a good bit of water cooling at the bottom.
In the oven itself?
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be, when you use the convection steam mode or steam mode, particularly steam mode, and then a little bit in convection humid, there will be a little bit of water that gathers at the bottom of the oven, right? This is very natural. Our oven does not have a drain in it. Therefore, the water has to pool somewhere. There's always going to be a certain amount of condensation that will gather at the bottom of the oven. So there will always be a little bit. That's why it's always good to have a clean towel kind of close at hand, so that when you need to wipe out after you're done baking or roasting or steaming, you can just literally wipe out the bottom of the oven. That's the other beauty of this appliance, is that it's almost continuously self-cleaning. Anytime you're using steam as part of your cooking mode, you're cleaning the walls of the oven with that beautiful clean steam that's rinsing the walls down and helping the grease not build up. So again, having a towel to wipe out the oven when you're done with each process really is very, very helpful. And then if you want to and we'll talk extensively about cleaning tomorrow. So if you're interested in coming back and learning a little bit about maintaining and cleaning the oven, we'll have that in tomorrow's Zoom call. But we'll definitely be using steam as part of our cleaning regimen on it almost daily. Whenever we're using the oven, we're going to use the steam to help clean it out.
Somebody asked about a cookbook for that.
A cookbook for the oven. All right. So there's a couple resources. Obviously, if you purchase the oven, you get a book that's published by the Sub-Zero Wolf Corporation called Mastering the Convection Steam Oven. That has just a bit of information. It's not super in-depth, but it covers in a wide spectrum the different ways you can use the oven. And there's probably, I think, 40 or 50 recipes in there. There's a few other resources that you can avail yourself to it. Here at Roth Living, we have not only our Roth Living Lifestyle Instagram channel and our Roth Living YouTube channel, which are filled with the different chefs from around the company contributing their own recipes, whether it's convection steam or maybe for the M series oven, or even perhaps using the stovetop. But we've got a lot of recipes there as well. And then there is a recipe website, I should say, called Steam and Bake. It's an Australian lady. She has some interesting recipes on hers as well. Otherwise, there's not a ton of content out there that is dedicated to a convection steam oven, short of the cookbook that Wolf and Sub-Zero produce and that one website. And then obviously our social media platforms, where the chefs here at the company are actually developing content for that. So you can go in and find some great recipes on there as well.
And steam and bake is
Steam and bake, yeah. Yes.
All CSOs, not just.
Yes, it's not just the Wolf CSO. It's just basically for this type of appliance, a convection steam oven, could be any manufacturer. So she makes some careful adjustments for the different types of ovens. So some ovens have a little more adjustability than others, and she accounts for that in all of her recipes as well.
Don't have any.
No more questions? We're not going to eat in front of anybody. We promise that seems mean to do that. So tomorrow when we come back and do the second half of our Zoom call for tomorrow, we're going to talk about sort of the automatic transmission modes, if you will. So the gourmet mode and the different modes in there where the oven does a lot of the thinking for you. We'll talk a little bit more about how sensor cooking works in the oven and how the oven think its way through it. So it takes some of the guesswork that you might have out of the baking process or the cooking process. And then we'll also talk about just how to maintain, how to clean the oven as well tomorrow. Be a little bit more about that.
So I know we have some folks tuning in who have the knob version.
Right.
We're wondering, we have the questions coming in, so I'm getting to everybody.
Great.
Are the cooking modes different from the older with the twist knob?
No, the modes are still going to be the same. Convection steam, convection humid, they're going to be the same the oven is going to be behaving in the same way when you use those particular modes. It's not going to be, there's a slightly different way of interface, and that's really it. But the oven itself is going to be behaving in the same fashion.
Perfect. And how does the reheat mode handle meats or chicken?
In terms of reheating, it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to program it for a particular type of food when you're in the reheating mode. It's always going to use, again, that combination of steam and dry air, that 250-degree dry air, in order to reheat the food. So the steam obviously introduces moisture back into the food. That dry air is obviously what's heating the food again. So you don't necessarily have to program for a particular type of food, just depending on how you like the food to be. We have an auto reheat mode, which again, we'll talk extensively about tomorrow, but auto reheat basically allows you to choose whether you'd like your food to be a little more moist or a little more crispy. And then the oven will adapt to how you would like the food to come out, and either use more or less steam and a higher or lower temperature in order to reheat that food into the manner that you would like. So you don't really need to adjust for the particular food that you're reheating. Just know that it will get hot. And we will email, Linda's just telling me, we will send all of you who attended today, we're going to email you this recipe that we've prepared for you today. And again, hopefully you'll enjoy it. And then we'll have a recipe again tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to talk a lot about making bread. Obviously, it's been one of the big, I don't know if it's a national, but this pandemic has brought out the bread baker in almost everybody. A lot of people have been experimenting with their own sourdough and making those different things. We're going to talk a little bit about the different ways that you can bake bread in the convection steam oven, whether you're one of those tried and true, you've got a sourdough starter that you've had for years and years, and you've been baking sourdough constantly for a long time, or you're just new to that cooking technique and you want to start making your own bread. We're going to show you the different ways you can do bread in the convection steam oven tomorrow as well.
What mode would you use for a souffle?
So interestingly enough, you can just use straight convection mode in this oven to bake a souffle. Now, oddly enough, there is actually a souffle button that we'll talk about tomorrow as well. But using convection, which is sort of what most people don't think of when they're baking a souffle, they're thinking, why would I want a fan to be blowing hot air around an oven when I'm making a souffle? I might blow the top off my souffle or something like that. But actually in this oven, it just uses that dry air to bake your souffle, and it will not blow the top off your souffle, and it works out really, really nicely. So if you're going to do a souffle, again, in this oven, I would just use straight convection, just a nice dry, because steam is not really going to benefit your souffle in any way.
Okay. Also, what is the difference between bread mode and gourmet bread mode? And then after that, we had somebody request if we could see how they take off the door since they won't be able to join tomorrow.
Sure,
yep.
Sure. So there's essentially three different ways that you can bake bread in the oven. The oven has programs, what we call the auto programs and the gourmet modes, which are going to be more or less the oven taking over and baking the bread for you. So the difference is that when we're using auto steam bake in the oven, you're still deciding what temperature you'd like to bake at and for how long you would like to bake the bread. What the oven will do is dole out the steam automatically because it knows you want to bake bread, but it's going to add the steam into the oven cavity and give you that beautiful exterior crust. So in auto steam bake, you're deciding temperature and time. The oven will take care of the steam. When we get into the more gourmet mode, right, the oven basically takes over for you. It's going to decide temperature, it's going to decide time, and then all you're telling it is how do you like the crust on your bread. And then once you told it that, then the oven adds the steam in the proper amount. So the only decision you make is how heavy do you want your crust, and then the oven will take it over from there and pick up from there. So that's the more gourmet method. The auto steam bake, again, you have control over temperature and time. And then if you know completely, you don't want to use either one of those modes, you can just bake bread in the convection steam mode, where you have steam introduced through the entire baking process, and you can again decide on temperature and time as well. So
you want to give the door a shot?
Sure. So Lynn's going to come and show the camera for one of our attendees who won't be able to be here tomorrow. But I will tell you right now that for those of us who've been using the convection steam oven for a while, when you discover that you can take the door off in order to clean it, it will change your life dramatically. So when you need to take the door off for the oven, you literally just open it to where it's fully extended at 90 degrees to the oven. And then you'll notice here in the back, there are 2 clips around the hinges. Flip the clips all the way forward like that. So you can see that the clips are brought all the way forward, right? Then you want to lift the door to what we call the ready position at about 45 degrees. And you'll feel it'll stop automatically as you raise it up. You'll feel a little, it'll hit the clips. Then you literally just lift it up and out. And now the door is removed so that it's very easy to reach to the back of the oven so that you can clean it effectively by just removing the door, all right? So now to reinsert, leave the hinges exactly where they're, lift it into that 45-degree angle, slide the 2 hinges into the slots. Once you hear them drop into place, just open the door all the way till it's 90 degrees, flip the 2 clips back on the hinges, and now you're ready to go. So I hope that helps, but that really does make a difference. I'm not particularly tall, so, you know, if the door is extended and I'm trying to touch the back of the oven, that's not happening. So unless you're, you know, you play in the NBA or something like that, I don't think you're going to be able to reach it with the door fully extended like that. So, got any more questions for us, Lynn?
Do you know if it works with the older model, if they still have that feature to take off
On the door? I believe it's the same on the older model. On the first generation, I do believe that those hinges are the same on the door. I've never seen anything to the contrary.
And just kind of chatting about tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to determine the best way to make a recipe people already have and are used to cooking in their traditional convection.
For adapting recipes that you might normally have. That's correct. We definitely will. Definitely discuss that tomorrow, because that's one of the big questions we get is, do I have to completely relearn every recipe I've ever made in order to put it into convection steam oven? There's a few tips and tricks that we can teach you that you can just completely transition from a traditional oven to a convection steam oven and get, I think, superior results in most cases. Doesn't sound like so. Okay, well, I can't tell you how much we appreciate everybody coming out and joining us today. I'm hopefully that this has been insightful and impactful for those of you who either own or are considering owning a convection steam oven. I know that when we email this recipe out to you, I'm sure that we'll put my email address in there. So if you have any other questions, whether it's cooking related or use and care related, and if you're not able to make it with us tomorrow, that you're always welcome to reach out to me and ask those questions. I'm happy to respond to make it the experience for you so much better. And if there's nothing else, then we'll look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. And again, thank you so much again for joining us. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
we'll see
guys.
you tomorrow.
All right.
Oh, no, that's
Ben?
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
We're on your call. We couldn't get the chat question in. We don't know how to do
Okay. Sure. What's the question?
Well, we want to cook a turkey breast.
Uh-huh.
Would the best method in that be to use the probe?
Yes.
So what would you, because I didn't really see that in the book when I was looking for it.
It's a huge turkey breast.
Yeah, it's a 9-pound turkey breast.
Okay.
And
all right, so great. So, okay, we'll start with the basics. You're going to want to use the convection steam mode. That's going to be the mode that you're going to want to use.
Yeah.
All right, go convection steam. In that convection steam, you're going to want to insert the probe. So if you think about your turkey breast having that big thick end at the back where the wing is usually attached, and then the narrow end, you want to put the turkey probe as deep into that thick end as possible. Generally go from the top down and work down towards the middle, trying to avoid putting the tip of the probe up against the breastbone that still runs through your turkey breast, okay? I would set your probe temperature in your oven to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. And are you guys familiar on how to set the probe temperature on your oven?
Not really, no.
Okay. So can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see that very well.
All right, I'm going to move up closer so you can see it a little closer, okay? Hopefully this will be, all right, got to make sure I tilt the camera the right way. So if we were going to use convection steam, right, we're going to scroll over to where we have the convection steam is highlighted.
Yep.
Press enter. Tells you which rack position. You're going to use rack position too, because obviously you're only cooking one. Then once you get this screen, the first screen is going to be set temperature. If you use your arrow cursor and go back one space or to the left, you get set food probe temp. So you just touch enter and now touch the up arrow and it gives you a default temperature, which you can now adjust anywhere between 90 and 210 degrees. For a turkey breast, I would take it down 3 degrees to 155 degrees. Once you've got that target temperature, just touch enter. Now, once that probe is put into the side of the oven, and you guys know that, here, let me,
Yeah, there's a little.
right, the little
flap.
door here is the probe where you plug the probe into the wall right there. You see that? So you plug the probe end into this, the other sharp end into the turkey, and then what I would do is for my turkey, I would start off at a slightly higher temperature. I might start roasting the turkey at about 400 degrees. And then I would do that for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then once those 15, 20 minutes are up, then I would reduce my temperature to anywhere between 325 and 350 degrees and let it roast until that probe temperature is achieved. And once the probe temperature is achieved, the oven won't turn itself off, but it'll tell you you've reached your target temperature. Go ahead and pull it out. Let it rest for about 15, 20 minutes before you slice it to make sure the juices are retained in the turkey.
Oh,
Okay.
Great.
We're going to try it.
And if you need that, if you just leave a note in the chat, or if they could do the chat, okay. Why don't we'll get your name and your email, and I can always type that out for you and just shoot it over to you if you want. That way you'll have a written record of it as well.
Oh, that would be great. For some reason, we can't get the chat to work, though. We typed it in
We
to
typed it in,
everyone.
but it doesn't send.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't know what to hit after we type it in, and then we
All
add,
right.
yeah,
So-
then we tried it to you, and it went privately. Then we tried it to Lynn, and but we don't see how to send it.
And I'm sorry, I can't on my screen. I don't know who I'm for this. Give me your names.
Oh, is it for the pan?
Tom Bertard.
Tom. All right. So what we'll do is we will get your email and I will shoot you over a little recipe, if you will, of how to do that turkey breast. And that way you'll have all the particulars written down so you don't have to, remember what I just said and all that good stuff.
you.
But I can
Well, thank
be
you.
happy to do it. Happy to do it.
And if anybody else has similar issue where they couldn't either see the chat or participate, if you'd like to unmute yourselves and ask questions as well, feel free to do that. We don't want to miss anybody in case their chat feature wasn't working exactly right. So feel free.
Really? No more questions? End the call.
We do have a question, but it's a clean.
All right.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and end now. So again, thanks again for joining. And again, if you have any questions, just shoot me an email or Lynn an email directly. We'll definitely collaborate on getting the answers to you. And then we really look forward to hopefully seeing all of you. If those of you can make it back tomorrow, we'd really enjoy having you join us again tomorrow afternoon. So thanks,
Great.
and guys, stay safe and be well. So
Thank you all.
thanks, guys.
You too. Bye-bye.